and welcome back to Sing Along with Pablo, number 2. And today we're going to read chapter 2, and if we have time, possibly chapter 3, of Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events, Book 1, The Bad Beginning. To recap what happened last time, Klaus, Sonny, and Violet Baudelaire, their parents have died in a fire, and they just met Mr. Poe, this really fat banker guy, who's going to do some stuff with them. Got in their car, and let's just find out what's going to happen to these guys. Going to have a bookmark, so I'm going to have to... Chapter 2. As always, I always show you the illustrations done by the great illustrator, Brett Helquist. Chapter 2. As you can see, you see a big mansion, it's all burned down. Oh, boo-hoo. Who cares? Yeah. It is useless for me to describe to you how terrible Violet, Klaus, and even Sonny felt in the time that followed. If you have ever lost someone very important to you, then you already know how it feels. And if you haven't, you cannot possibly imagine it. For the children, it was of course especially terrible because they had lost both their parents at the same time. We don't know if it was at the same time because the wife would be like in the fire and the husband would be like on the roof. Explosion of blood and guts. And for several days they felt so miserable they could scarcely get out of bed. Klaus found he had little interest in books. The gears in Violet's inventive brain seemed to stop. And even Sonny, who of course was too young to really understand what was going on, did things with less enthusiasm. Of course, it didn't make things any easier that they had lost their home as well, and all their possessions. As I'm sure you know, to be in one's own room and one's own bed can often make a bleak situation a little better. But the beds of the Baudelaire orphans has been reduced to charred rubble. Rubble. Yeah. Mr. Poe had taken them to the remains of the Baudelaire mansion to see if anything had been unharmed, and it was terrible. Violet's microscope had fused together in the heat of the fire. Klaus's favorite pen had turned to ash, and all of Sonny's teething rings have melted. Here and there, the children could see traces of the enormous home that they had loved, fragments of their grand piano, an elegant bottle in which Mr. Baudelaire kept brandy, and the squarched cushion of the window seat where their mother liked to sit and read. Their home destroyed, the Baudelaires had to recuperate. Another big word. When in doubt, sound it out. Wow, it was recuperate. Recuperate from their terrible loss in the Mr. Poe household, which he was not at all agreeable. Mr. Poe was scarcely at home because he was very busy attending to the Baudelaire affairs, and when he was home he was often coughing so much he could barely have a conversation. Mrs. Poe purchased clothing for the orphans that were in grotesque colors and itched like crazy, and the two Poe children, Edgar and Albert, were loud and obnoxious little tiny boys with whom the Baudelaires had to share a tiny room that smelled of sort of ghastly flower. Apparently, this flower didn't smell really good. It may have had bee poo in it. But even given the surroundings, the children had mixed feelings when overindulged dinner of boiled chicken, boiled potatoes, blanched. The word blanched here means boiled string beans. Mr. Poe announced that they were going to leave his household the next morning. Good, said Albert, who had a piece of potato stuck between his teeth. Now we can get our room back. I'm tired of sharing it. Violet and Klaus are always mobbing around, and are never any fun. And the baby bites, Edgar said, tossing a chicken bone to the floor as if he were in an animal in a zoo and not the son of a well-respected member of the banking community. Where will we go? Violet asked nervously. Mr. Poe opened his mouth to say something, but interrupted himself into a brief fit of coughing. I have made arrangements, he said finally, for you to be raised by a distant relative of yours who lives on the other side of town. His name is Count Olaf. Violet, Klaus, and Sonny looked at one another, unsure of what to think. On one hand, they didn't want to live with the Poes any longer. On the other hand, they had never heard of Count Olaf and didn't know what he would be like. Your parents will, Mr. Poe said, instructions that you will be raised in the most convenient way possible. Here in this city, you'll be raised to your surroundings, and this Count Olaf is the only relative who lives within the urban limits. Klaus thought this over for a minute as he swallowed a chew-a-bit-a-bean. Chew-a-bit-a-bean, yeah. But our parents never mentioned Count Olaf, just to us, Klaus said. Just how is he related to us exactly? Mr. Poe sighed and looked down at Sonny, who was biting a fork and listening closely. He is either a third cousin 4 times removed, or a fourth cousin 3 times removed. He is not your closest relative on the family tree, but he is the closest geographically. That's why. If he lives in the city, Violet interrupted, why didn't our parents ever invite him over? Possibly because he was very busy, Mr. Poe said. He's an actor by trade and often travels around the world with various theater companies. I thought he was a count, Klaus said. He's both a count and an actor, Mr. Poe said. Now, I don't mean to cut short our dinner, but you children have to pack up your things, and I have to return to the bank to do some more work. Like your new legal guardian, I am very busy myself. The 3 Baudelaire children had many more questions for Mr. Poe, but he had already stood up from the table, and with a slight wave of his hand departed from the room. They heard him coughing into his handkerchief, and then the front door creaked shut as he left the house. Well, Mrs. Poe said, you 3 had better start packing. Edgar, Albert, please help me clean the table. Why is it always the women who have to cook the food and have to clean the food, and the husband or father just walks away from the scene? You know what? I might not like this. I might have to complain. I might be a feminist, I'm not a woman though. Trust me, ask my friends. Not in a weird way. The Baudelaire orphans went into the bedroom and glumly packed their few belongings. Klaus looked dressed tastefully at East's ugly shirt that Mrs. Poe had brought for him, as if he folded them and put them into a small case. Violet looked around the cramped, smelly room in which they had been living, and Sonny crawled around, solemnly biting each of Edgar and Albert's shoes. That's what you get, you little pieces of poo, for spitting on the floor and calling Violet a rhyming word. She really didn't do that, though. Why'd I just say that? I mean he. Leaving small teeth marks in each one, so she would not be forgotten. From time to time, the Baudelaire children looked at one another, but with their future such a mystery, they could not think of anything to say. At bedtime, they tossed and turned all night, scarcely getting any sleep between the last ring of Edgar and Albert and their unworried thoughts. Finally, Mr. Poe knocked on the door and stuck his head into the bedroom. "Rise and shine, Baudelaires," he said. "It's time for you to go to Count Olaf's." Violet looked around the crowded bedroom, and even though she didn't like it, she felt very nervous about leaving. "Do we have to go right this minute?" she said. Mr. Poe opened his mouth to speak, but had to cough a few times before he began. "Yes, you do. I'm dropping you off at the bank, so we need to leave as soon as possible. Please get out of bed and get dressed, you naked little girl." It doesn't say that. He said briskly. The word briskly here means quickly, so as to get the Baudelaire children to leave the house as soon as possible. The Baudelaire children left the house. Mr. Poe's automobile rumbled along the cobblestone streets of the center of the neighborhood where Count Olaf lived. They passed horse-drawn carriages and motorcycles along the doldrum drive. They passed a fickle fountain and a elaborate carved monument that occasionally spat out water, and which the young children occasionally played in when they had their parents. They passed an enormous pile of dirt where the royal gardens once stood. Before too long, Mr. Poe drove his car down a narrow alley lined with houses made of pale brick and stopped halfway down the block. "Here we are," Mr. Poe said in a voice undoubtedly meant to be cheerful. "Your new home." Okay, I'm going to try a new singing voice. The Baudelaire children looked out and saw the prettiest house on the block. The bricks had been cleaned very well, and through the wide and open windows, one could see in the shop made of well-groomed plants and books. Suddenly, the doorway, with her hand on the shiny brass doorknob, was an older woman, smartly dressed, who was sitting at the children. On one hand, she carried a flower pot. New voice. "Hello there," she called out. "You must be the children Count Olaf is adopting." Violet opened the door of the automobile and got out to shake the woman's hand. It felt firm and warm for the first time in a long while. Violet felt as if her life and the lives of her siblings might turn out very well. "Yes," she said, "yes we are. I am Violet Baudelaire, and this is my brother Klaus and my sister Sunny. And this is Mr. Poe, who has been arranging things for us since the death of our parents." You know what? This is a little little bit of a long chapter. So this is going to be called Chapter 2A. Honestly, I think that's pretty much the basis of the chapter. They arrive at the home, and we will obviously see you guys next time on Sing Along with Pablo. Hope you enjoy. I'm gonna go jump out a window.